So it's spring, it's beautiful outside, and with spring comes spring cleaning and spring maintenance. So we're going to get started on all of our maintenance projects, or as many of them as we can get done this week. If upgrading your battery for your RV is on your checklist this spring, check out REDODO. We put in a 410 amp hour lithium battery here a few months ago, and we've been really impressed with the results. It's given us a lot more flexibility when boondocking. The runtime's very good. It's compact. It weighs less than the two batteries we had in here before. When we installed that battery, so many of you guys reached out to us in the comments asking about low temp cutoff and what kind of BMS it has, and there was a lot of concern around the low temp protection. We don't RV in super low temps that often, so it's not a huge concern for us, but we did reach out to REDODO, and they responded to us within a day to let us know that they have low temp protect batteries coming, and they're here. They now have a 100 amp hour and a 200 amp hour low temp battery with an upgraded BMS that'll shut them off if it gets too cold, kick them back on when it warms up again. I think it'd be a great option, and if you guys know me, I'm all about saving some money, and these batteries are priced very competitively versus any of the competition out there. They have some bundle deals. If you want to buy 2, 3, 4 batteries and parallel all those together, they've got some really good discounts when you bundle. They even have some like new batteries that can save you even more depending on what they have in stock. And since we're here at the lake and I was looking at their website anyway, I noticed they sell things like trolling motor batteries. They sell small batteries, big batteries, and everything in between. So give their website a check. There's a ton of stuff on there you guys can look at. I'm sure you'll find something that fits your needs. We've been really happy with the performance of our 410 amp hour battery. It's given us so much more flexibility when boondocking, and it's a lot more like home. And it kind of makes me want to do even more with the boondocking setup since we have this massive battery now. We just want to thank them for working with us and for sponsoring this video and for their continued support of our channel.
And for allowing us to be the ones to introduce the low temp batteries to you guys per our request, because it was something that we hadn't thought about that you guys brought to us. And as we travel north over the next few months, we're still watching those temps a little bit. I don't think we're going to hit anything severe, but you never know. We're still in springtime.
And if you guys want to save even more on your REDODO battery purchase, be sure to check the link in the description and use our discount code.
That's right. So when Cody would ask me to get on the roof and check for anything scary, problems, I'll be honest, I didn't know what that meant. It all looks pretty terrible to me.
And make sure when you're doing this to check with your manufacturer, look in your owner's manual. I know for us it says to do a roof inspection every 6 months and reseal is needed. Before we can do any of that resealing, you got to clean the roof. And we took care of that yesterday. We actually ended up cleaning everything we had yesterday in preparation for spring maintenance. So now that the roof is clean, the first thing I'm going to do is pose a question to you guys. What do you use to clean your roof? When we talk about the roof, you've got seams and seals everywhere. Now I've done some pre-work a couple of years back and put some Eternabond around things like my skylights, just as a way to try to shore up any weak points in the roof, and really anywhere that they've cut a hole to put something in, an AC, a vent, those are all potential weak points. So I did put Eternabond on that. You can see the Eternabond's holding up pretty well to be 2 years in. It's not as shiny white as it used to be, but these things set under trees and they get all that pine tar and all that mess on it. So I don't really expect it to stay looking pretty, but it's definitely holding on really well. So if you have skylights and vents and things like that, you want to check those seams around your vents, around your skylights. And if you see anything that's cracking or brittle, you want to go ahead and cover that up with lap sealant. It's a good time to take a look at the whole roof and look for scratches and tears. You can see on ours, we do have some scratches where we've had some trees brush. So that's the point of getting up and looking at your roof every time you move the trailer, just to make sure, because if I would have torn that a month ago, we'd have water damage today. This all looks good, it's just cosmetic stuff. For the fifth wheel owners, something I want everybody to pay particularly close attention to is this front cap seam up here. A lot of the Grand Design Reflections have had problems with the roof coming loose right here at the front cap. Logically, you would think this roofing material goes under the front cap and is secured, but it's not. It just kind of butts up with the threshold plate there. And if you look at them sitting new on a dealership lot, especially the Grand Design Reflection, this is all just kind of globbed over with lap sealant. It looks really bad. And so Since that's a weak point and we know that's where a lot of these roofs split, is right here at this seam, I took black Eternabond tape, and there's actually 2 layers, 2 4-inch strips. I overlapped those 4-inch strips. 1, it looks a little bit cleaner from the ground, and 2, it takes care of my concern of the roof splitting and coming loose right here. And I added a little bit of lap seal behind it. So this is a good example. If you're looking at lap seal, you can see right here where that's gotten kind of brittle and you can see light through it. So we definitely need to touch that up a little bit. Anywhere that you have a seam, you're gonna wanna look for stuff like this. You're gonna wanna look for things that are brittle, where it's peeling off, and just make sure we put a fresh coat of lap seal anywhere where we see any of that pitting. This is also around our bathroom vent right here. You can see all this was kind of globbed on from the factory, and then I've added another layer around here last year. This all looks good, albeit a little bit discolored. And full disclosure, I suck with the caulk gun. I'm terrible at it. I couldn't put a straight bead on anything to save my life. Maybe that's the case for you too, and just remember, it's the roof. The only one that should ever be looking at it is you, and as long as it doesn't leak, personally, this stuff doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be sealed. While we're up here, we're looking for things like these vents to see if they have any cracks in them. They can get brittle as well. We've got our WindGuard TV antenna here that has lap sealant all over and around it. And even though it's a bit discolored from leaves and stuff like that, all this still looks pretty good. I don't see any pitting. I don't see any bad spots to speak of. Same with our solar panel legs. Those still look really good. While you're up here, it's a really good time as you're walking just to kind of walk the whole roof. Look for any soft spots. The roofs are going to flex a little bit, but if you've been on your roof before, you should be able to tell the difference between a true soft spot and just roof flex, which is normal. These things flex a lot on the roofs. Something, to be quite honest, that I don't like, and I didn't have it on my Jayco and I didn't have it on my old Keystone, but at least on the Grand Designs, all of these roofs seem to have bubbles and wrinkles in them. This has been like that since I bought the trailer. I don't like it. Grand Design tells me it's normal. If you see that and you're concerned about it, check with your dealer or your manufacturer. But from what I've been told so far, the little lines and bubbles are normal. I don't have to like it, but that's what I'm told. It looks like they put a Eternabond over the roof seam on the slide out from the factory. So you want to take a look at that. You want to make sure that that's not cracked or beat up or peeling back or discolored or anything like that. Above your slides, it's very likely that you're going to have a rain gutter here. And this rain gutter has a bead of clear silicone down the top of it. Same thing, we're looking for cracking, discoloration, peeling. I just redid this seal last spring and it still looks great. Same with the caulk that's on top of your slide seal. I just redid this one last year. You can tell that because it's super ugly. Got a little bit of peel in there. I may touch up this area here. Another thing you want to make sure and check is this seal right on top of the rain gutter. The sealant here isn't cracking and it's not pitting, but it's starting to get a little bit of what looks like mildew or staining on it. Since it doesn't have any cracks or pits, I don't see cause for immediate concern, but I would almost be willing to bet we'll have to reseal all of this next year. You'll likely have some caulking on the screws for your awnings. Make sure if there's caulking around your awning brackets, go ahead and touch that up too if needed. While you're up here, it's a good time to go ahead and take the shrouds off and clean the ACs. That's on my list, but that's going to come in another video. There's a lot of lap sealant already on there from the factory, but make sure to pay attention around the ladders. I redid both of these last year because they had a lot of small pits, and when I say pits, it'll look like somebody took something about the size of a pencil lead and just poked all in there as it starts to deteriorate. If you see it, go ahead and clean that up and knock it out. I added a Eternabond to our rear cap as well last year just as a preventative measure, so I don't have to seal that anymore. Putting a Eternabond on your seals and your vents, that's a matter of personal preference. I'll probably get some hate in the comments about this because everyone's told me if you ever have to take it off, it's going to be a major pain, and I'm sure it would be because that stuff really sticks. The reality is if I ever have to pull the Eternabond off the rear cap, the front cap, the skylights, whatever, it means something's broke. In that point, I'm not too worried about it because we're probably getting a new roof anyway if it does enough to rip all that off. Andrew ran down to the local RV store for me today to pick up some lap sealant and a couple other things I needed. I've used a lot of different brands of this. It doesn't really seem to matter what kind of lap sealant you use. Just make sure that whatever kind of membrane your roof's made out of, you get a lap sealant that's compatible, because otherwise they may not play nice and may not stick as well, or could potentially even do some damage. This is XTRM Ply. It's good for all roof membranes. I used it last year too. It does a pretty good job. And then she swung by Ace Hardware and got some all-purpose flexible silicone. This is GE brand. I would recommend getting a good brand. You don't want to get the cheap stuff because when the trailer starts to move and shake going down the highway, that silicone may not last as long if it's not very flexible. So I know there are some RV brands like ProFlex, I believe is the name of it, that make the clear silicone for the side. That may be better. I didn't have access to it and it's really spendy. I've used GE all-purpose silicone for years on RVs and I've never had an issue.
We learned a trick last year of how to put caulk on really smoothly. Now I have mixed feelings about it because it involves applying soap water. We have tried it. We have seen people personally that have done it successfully. So I'm just gonna say, do your own research and decide if this is for you. It weirds me out a little bit to apply water to something that's gonna be a sealant. But it is a pretty smooth and quick process. So I am gonna show you, and if it works for you, great. You apply your bead, which I'm not good at either. I've already messed it up. Cody, don't look.
I'm not looking.
Then spray. And it's smooth as butter. And if you need to clean up the sides, it cleans up really easily. And then it dries. And I'll show you up close. Has suds on it, but you'll see how clean this is. Go ahead, tell me how beautiful it is. Good job, Angela. That's a beautiful bead. There you go. Use it, don't use it, but I wanted to share. Cody was so jealous of my beautiful bead.
Told her to come do it again.
It probably has nothing to do with him wanting me to do it.
Some other things you need to check on the outside of the trailer to make sure they're nice and sealed. Take a hard look at your lights, above and below. Now I just resealed these lights last year, and you can see this silicone has already turned from clear to brown, black, whatever, which is just from road debris and dust on the highway. The seal is good. It's still flexible. Doesn't have any pits or cracks in it, so we know that's good to go. Take a look at this seal here on your back wall. There's butyl tape in there from the factory, and that's what you can see squishing out. But at the point that you start to see any kind of cracking or peeling or anything like that, you want to reseal this, because that could allow water to get in between your two walls right here where they join. For now, that looks great. No reason to be concerned. There's another seal that runs right down along this bottom bar here. Same thing, we're just doing a quick visual, nothing overly scientific. Taking a look at our other light, our spray port on the back. You're just looking for anywhere that you could get some water intrusion. If it doesn't look right, go ahead and caulk it. You can't overdo it. At some point, if you get too much, you'll have to scrape it off, but this is all stuff that's very worth doing. The bottom of your slide skis and up the side of your slide, which still looks good. I'll hop on a ladder in a second and take a look at that top seal, but that all looks good. You have silicone around all of your baggage doors. Kick your awnings out, take a look at your awning bolts back here. Make sure if there's any silicone on yours or if there's butyl tape that's peeling off, go ahead and clean that up. And you're just going to want to rinse and repeat that across all of your slide outs, all of your baggage doors, all of your lights on the trailer. Up front, we have some more things to check. On a fifth wheel, you've got your front cap, which swoops up this way, And I can see I've got a couple of spots in the silicone that are kind of looking like they're starting to degrade or peel back just a hair. That seal goes all the way up and above your awnings. So I know I've got some touch-up work to do there. And on the front side of it, if you have a front cap light, and then rinse and repeat right down the other side, paying close attention to your cap seam seals, the seals that come out around your slide boxes, all your baggage doors. Just do a really good visual inspection. You don't have to redo it all every year. Of course you can if you want to. I kind of stick to what needs to be done so I don't end up with a whole bunch of extra silicone and stuff on there. And it's really just that simple. If it looks bad, go ahead and seal over it. If for some reason you find that you think you've had water intrusion anywhere, that may be an indicator of a bigger problem, and you may have to consult your dealer for some help on that. While we're doing all this close and detailed visual inspection, take a look for any kind of missing screws. You got things like your battery vent here. People don't think about this very often. Look for missing or loose screws. Things like your baggage door magnets. The trim underneath your slides under here all has screws in it. If you remember back about a year ago, I did a video in which we were losing screws out of our Schwintek slide, and I've had to replace the bulk of these because they were over tight from the factory and broke and sheared off in there. So it's just a good time while you're looking everything over with the magnifying glass. Look at screws, connections. A big thing I see a lot on other RVs that hasn't happened to ours is these screws on your fenders like to work themselves out. It's just a really good time to try to catch any and all of that stuff that you can while you're doing your spring maintenance. Maintenance week is about to come to a close. We're almost done with all this spring maintenance stuff. Now we're going to talk about a little suspension and axle maintenance. We're going to take care of these wheel bearings. While we're down here, there's a few things that you can check while you're under here doing the wheel bearings anyway. I'm going to point a couple things out, then we're going to get into the dirty work. While we have the tire off, I want to take a second just to look over the overall condition of the tire, the tread depth. We just put these tires on back in the winter, so they're looking really good, even though they have quite a few miles on them already. Just looking for uneven wear, any kind of cupping, any kind of cuts. Paying really close attention to the tread here. Taking a look at the sidewalls, looking for any bulging. Looking at the wheel just to make sure there's no cracks or anything like that. This tire looks great. Let's crawl under the trailer. So while we're under here, just some things to think about. At least on our reflection, we've got a propane line that runs all the way from the front to the back. Give that a good visual. Make sure no road debris popped up, hit it, split it. There's no chafing. It's not hanging too low or rubbing on anything. Our lines look really good. We also have sewer hose tubes on the back for our sewer hoses. We're just going to give that a quick visual, make sure all of our mounting brackets are staying tight, no cracking or anything of that nature. We're also going to take a look at the spare tire. We've covered it before, but our reflection has an issue with the spare tire coming down in transit. We have a fix for that, and we'll put a link to that video in the description and a thumbnail somewhere over here so you know what you're looking for. But when's the last time you checked your spare tire air pressure? I know back in the fall when I had to put the spare on, it had like 50 pounds of air in it. And our spare is supposed to have 80. So we're going to go ahead and check the air pressure while we're under here, make sure our spare tire is in good shape. Another thing we want to look at while we're under here, just take a look at your jacks. Make sure you haven't hit anything or that you don't have any loose bolts. We can check the torque on these, but a real quick way to see if something's loose is you would have rust around the head of the bolt if it's been loose for a while. All these look good. I'll check them for torque before I finish up here. Just kind of giving you a quick overview of some things that you could and should be taking a look at while you're down here. Also, while we're at it, let's take a look at our leaf springs. Making sure we don't have any cracks. We're going to check and make sure these U-bolts are nice and tight before we button everything up. And this is a great time to grease these wet bolts. Sometimes if there's weight on the trailer, it's hard to get them to take grease. So while you have everything jacked up and supported with jack stands anyway, it's a good time to go ahead and grease those and just knock it out while you're under here. We also want to take a look at all the wiring and the cables for our brakes. So on ours, we have brake wire connections right here, which look good. They're secured. They've got a zip tie around them. They're not hanging low. They're not too tight. There's enough slack in them. They can jiggle going down the highway. We got our connections here that go into the back of the brake drum. All that stuff looks good. While we're in here greasing our wet bolts anyway, take a really good look at your equalizer if you have one. Look for any splits in the metal, any loose bolts, any sign that it's not doing what it's supposed to do, like if you're rubbing the paint off of one side, not the other, it could be an indicator that it's bent. This one looks really good. Take a look at your spring hanger brackets here and also on each end of the spring. Look for any cracking up here around these welds, any cracking in these support bars. That's a common failure point. I haven't had it happen to me, but I've seen it happen to others. Just a good time for a visual inspection. If we see a cracked spring, a cracked or damaged equalizer, any of our mounting points that are damaged, we're going to bring this thing to a stop, reach out to a mobile tech that can come out here and do some welding or replace a part if they need to. This side looks great, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up greasing these wet bolts. We're just going to give this grease till we start seeing a little bit come out the other side. There it is. Greasy, greasy.
And make sure, if you have a special lucky pair of Holy jeans, make sure you wear those as well.
This is my last pair of Holy jeans, and they probably won't survive this project because I usually end up throwing away whatever clothes I have on when I do bearings. So I know wheel bearings may seem like a daunting task, but they're actually very easy to do. We're just going to remove this cotter pin right here. That is about the hardest part of the project, just getting that old cotter pin off. We're going to pull this nut off the axle. They're not on very tight. Continual disclaimer is, this is not a how-to. This is what we do. So make sure you follow your manufacturer's recommendations for all of this work. There is a washer in here. You want to make sure you don't lose that. Generally, the brake drums will come off pretty easy.
Until you say that.
Until I say that. So we got the drum off. While we're in here, we're going to take a really good look at our brake linings and make sure they don't have any grease on them. Ours do, just because I touched it right here. But if you had a major problem like a blown seal or something like that, there'd be grease all in here. This is pretty clean, a lot cleaner than it was last time. You can see our red grease has started to turn brown with age, but overall our spindle looks very good. We'll clean this up with brake cleaner and get it all nice and shiny before we put it back together. I just use a little brake parts cleaner on this from O'Reilly's. It's cheap, it cuts through it pretty good, does a pretty nice job. And we'll use some stage 3 rags to get everything shiny again. While we're in here, some other things I'm looking at. We're looking at our brake springs to make sure that they're all intact. This should all be tight. So if for some reason stuff's kind of falling out, or this magnet down here especially, if it's hanging down, then we got a brake problem. We may need to put some new brake drums on or get a spring kit. Overall, this looks pretty good. Looking at our spindle, we're looking for any signs of marring, uneven or unsmooth surfaces. This metal should be clean and shiny. If it's dark or black or has any kind of pitting in it, that could be a sign that it's been overheated or wasn't greased appropriately. These look really, really good. I'm really happy with these so far. Now, we're going to remove this grease seal, pop that bearing out, take a look at it. Before we go back together, I'll give a nice coating of grease to this. I'll put quite a bit in there just to make sure we're good, but you saw how much was on when I took it off, and that was more than sufficient. So let's get these bearings cleaned up, and we'll take a look at what's going on with them. In order to get this inner bearing out, we got to pop this grease seal off, and to do that, we're going to use our seal removal tool that I picked up on Amazon. These things last forever. It's something you're only going to buy once unless you lose it. I'll put a link in the description to everything I'm using here, and we also have a maintenance section on our Amazon store with our commonly used items. You can check that out as well. I'll put our grease seals and our bearings in there. I haven't had to replace the bearings, but I do have them on there. Just be aware that you'll probably end up having to pull your hub down and get the numbers off the grease seals and the bearings. I did that last year because the manufacturer couldn't tell me for sure which seal I had. So you'll probably have to look at it yourself the first time and probably go to a local trailer shop or auto parts store to get the seals and bearings if you need bearings the first time around. And once you do that, do what I did. Take a picture of it, save it in your phone. That way when you need this stuff again, you can just order it and have it sent wherever you're at. So we're just going to pop this seal out real quick. Word of advice, don't attempt to reuse these seals. You usually end up breaking them when they come out. I've known some folks that have tried to straighten them and reuse them. 4 new seals for 15 bucks or 16 bucks on Amazon. It's cheap insurance. Don't risk it. So that seal's out, it'll go right in the trash. Here's our bearing. Let's go do a little cleanup work. Before we get too deep into this, we're going to do a really good inspection of this brake drum. Kind of like car brakes, you're looking for any kind of cracking, major discoloration. There's a little bit of surface rust in here. I'm not too worried about that because it doesn't actually touch anything. We're going to clean all of this out inside of here and get it nice and shiny again, ready to pack her with grease. All right, so we got our bearing here. Gave it a little shot of some brake cleaner. It takes a second, but we're going to get it all cleaned off really good. And as we're doing that, we're looking at the bearing. Notice the grease is a little bit dirty, which is normal. But we're looking for any kind of marring. We're looking for good, clean bearings. No marring, no pitting, no cracking. Feel for play in them. They should all be relatively tight. They should roll easy, but pushing them this way or up and down, they really shouldn't move much at all. And I like to go around and touch each individual roller. Roll it around in my hand. Make sure nothing jingles or jangles too much. No need to replace it until you absolutely have to. Getting them clean is another story. But just remember, you're going to pack them full of grease and do it all again anyway. Don't overthink it. We're going to mash new grease from the outside in. So that little bit of dark grease you see on the inside there, that's all going to come out with new grease. So I'm satisfied this one's good to go. You can buy a bearing packer if you want to. I don't see the use in it. We're just going to mash that grease from the outside in. And we're just going to keep going until we see clean grease come out the other side. You're going to make a mess. You're going to waste some grease. I recommend rubber gloves. But you can see some of that old grease coming out. New grease going in. See how it's feathering out of that backside there? So you know that section's good. You cannot over-grease, so don't let that concern you. I like this Lucas red and tacky grease because it's red and tacky and it sticks to everything. Used it for a long time. It's great on farm equipment. I use it on the impeller shaft of my boat. It's a little more expensive than your standard axle grease, but in my opinion, it's worth the cost. All right, we got us a big old ugly bearing covered in grease. Beautiful. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in the brake drum. So now we're gonna take our new seal and set it right down inside of here. And my little hack is to take a clean block of wood. You don't want to use a dirty one because that's just gonna put dirt inside your new bearings. Just tap it easy till it seats. Nothing gets out, nothing gets in. So that's that part of it. I still have the outer bearing that I've got to do real fast. Get it cleaned up and get it repacked with grease, and we're almost ready to go back together. Before we put all this back together, I like to put a little bit of grease on the spindle. You'll notice our rig, and yours may have this too, has a grease zerk here. Don't let that trick you into thinking that that's a replacement for packing your wheel bearings. This grease zerk is only going to shoot grease out here on this back bearing. It's not going to do anything for your front bearing. And while that's okay to do, and I usually do it about every 5,000 miles, I'll give it just 3 to 5 squirts of grease in each one of these zerks just to add a little bit to it, but it's not going to fully grease pack your bearings, and obviously there's no replacement for inspecting everything yourself. Our rig says to do this once a year or every 12,000 miles. I think that's an effective timeline, if not even maybe a little bit overkill. So now we got our bearing on. Make sure we can turn this without any excessive play. Clean up this washer here just a little bit. Slide this back on. Put our castle nut on. When it comes to torque on these castle nuts, you can look on the axle of your rig. It'll usually have a sticker that will tell you who made your axle, and you can reach out to that axle manufacturer and they'll give you really good guidance on what your torque should be. But needless to say, once you get it all torqued up, this should spin freely. Might hear a little brake noise. We don't have any play in or out jerking on it. We don't have any play up or down jerking on it. And you can do this with your tires on too. If you want to check them periodically, you can grab the tire, shake it left to right, top to bottom. If it wiggles this way, you've probably got a bearing going south on you or something going wrong, but this one's in pretty good shape. Now that we got our castle nut torqued down, put this all-important cotter pin back in. It's crazy to think that that castle nut and this cotter pin is all that holds this whole thing together. It's all that's keeping you from losing a wheel and tire going down the highway. Now we got it tightened up. We're going to make sure it spins freely. Give it a little jerk side to side, little jerk top to bottom, and that's it. That wheel bearing's packed. I'm going to put this dust cap back on, torque the tires, and I'm just going to do it 3 more times, but I won't make you guys suffer through that. Make sure that's seated up good all the way around. And that's it. Nothing too scary. Like I always say, work within your own limits. If this is something you feel comfortable doing, save yourself some money. I think Camping World's getting either $199 or $299 per axle. We have 2 axles, so that'd be $400 to $600 to have this done. I have a tube of grease that costs $12, $15 and 4 seals for about $16 plus my time and a whole bunch of rubber gloves. So it's a lot cheaper doing it yourself. And like a friend of mine always says, if you do it yourself, you know what you got. You can roll down the road confidently. Once you're done, be sure to torque your tires down to the manufacturer's specifications, which I'm going to do here in just a second, and get ready to do it again in 12 months.
Well, that does it. Well done.
That does it. You know, at the end of the day, it's been a year since I've done them, and we filmed the first one, and it took about 45 minutes messing with the camera, and all the rest of them took less than 30 minutes each, so not bad work in my opinion. If you're comfortable with your skill set and you've got the tools to do it, definitely worth saving the money over the dealership.
Hopefully this helped you guys. We just wanted to hit some of the big, scary, intimidating stuff. Obviously there is more that you could do.
I wouldn't call it scary, but there are, when it comes to spring maintenance, particularly if you don't RV full time and your rig's been put up for a while, there's all kinds of stuff that needs to be done in the spring and multiple times throughout the year, like greasing and cleaning the slide tracks, lubing the slide seals, checking electrical connections, checking plumbing connections, sanitizing your water tank, a whole bunch of other stuff. Just because we didn't show it here doesn't mean it didn't get done, but we did want to take on a couple of those jobs that are a little bit more intimidating based on what you guys have told us in the comments and people we've met in person. So hopefully this helped you out. If there's something on your spring maintenance list that you'd like to see tackled, let us know. Maybe we need to do it too, and we'll shoot a video on it. And if you're sick of seeing me work on stuff, just hang tight.
Yes.
Because we're about to hit the road again, and we got all kinds of adventure and travel coming your way. So we'll be back to our regular scheduled program real soon. Thanks for hanging in there with us and spending time with us again on this video. But it's running a little long. I think we better close it out.
Yep. See you later.
Bye, guys.